Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Kiddushin Daf Ayin Beis, almost at the end of the Masechta. What do we have? 10 days left, give or take. Pei Aleph, Pei Beis. All right, we have about 11 days left, including today's blot. I have to catch up 3 blot on the Seder because I missed 3 blot in Maseches Sota. So I'll have to learn 13 blot in the next 13 days. We'll figure it out one way or the other, because then we'll make a siyum, Baruch Hashem, on Seder Nashim, and then off to the world of Nezikin.
It ends on a Friday.
Yeah, we'll figure out all the logistics we always do. The Gemara says on the top of Ayin Beis Amud Aleph, about 8 lines down, 2 lines into the wide lines. Yesterday, we were discussing some of the boundaries of Bavel. Today, we're going to get into still more details about Bavel. Of course, some of this is geographically unknown to us, so it does make it a little hard to grasp some of the details. Again, as mentioned, the Maharsha does have a picture in the back of the book that does make it a little bit helpful. And I'm sure there are other resources as well. The Gemara says as follows, 2 lines before the wide lines on Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. Amar Rami Bar Abba, Chavil Yama. This is a location. Tchilta de Bavel. It's the most beautiful part of Bavel. Shunya veguvia Tchilta de Chavil Yama. And within Chavil Yama, Shunya veguvia, these 2 locations within are the most beautiful within the Chavil Yama. Ravina Amar Af Tzitzura. There was actually another location that was particularly beautiful within Chavil Yama, and the Gemara brings a brisa to match this. Tanya Nami Hachi, the brisa says, Chanan bar Pinchas Omer Chavil Yama Tchilta de Bavel. The most beautiful part of Chavil Yama, the most beautiful part of Bavel is Chavil Yama, and Shunya v'Guvya, and we see Vitzitzura, Ravina's additions also added into the brisa. These 3 locations are Tchilta de Chavil Yama, beautiful locations. However, Amar Rav Papa, he says, V'ha'idna nowadays, much as they may be beautiful, there are a lot of kusiyim there. And what does that mean? Remember what we were talking about yesterday is yichus, and now it's no longer a trustworthy community. We had said yesterday that Eretz Yisrael was Isal of Bavel. Eretz Yisrael was considered to be a mishkababel relative to Bavel. But here, Rav Papa was of the opinion that the kusayim were so mixed in that it questioned the purity of Bavel in this particular community. However, Velohi, the Gemara says 3 lines into the wide lines, a quarter of the way down, that it's not correct. Itzahu de Boyaminahu, the Kusiyim had requested to marry a particular woman from the city of Chavil Yama. Velo Yuavule, they were still makbid, they were still frum, they still held on stark, and they would not allow this Kusi to marry a Yiddisha maidel. My Chavil Yama, what's the location of Chavil Yama? Amar Rav Papa, Zupras de Borsi, it's Borsi, which was on the Pras on the Euphrates. Hau Gavra de Amar Luhu, there was a man who said to them, Ana min Shot Mishot, I'm from this particular city called Shot Mishot, and the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yitzchak Nafcha, Al Raglav Amar Shot Mishot Ben HaNaharos Omedes, this is between the rivers of the Diglas and the Pras. As the general loose bookends, Bavel is between these 2 rivers. That's the place where there is an aspect of purity of Bavel. And the Gemara says, thank you, Rav Yitzchak Nafcha, but v'chi ma bein hanaros omedes, v'chi bein hanaros omedes mai have, Amar Abaye, Amar Rabbi Chama bar Ukva, Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Rav Chanina, bein hanaharos harehi kigola liyuchsin. It's similar to this place that is Gola, and that therefore it's considered a place that's good for Yuchsin. V'hecha kaima. What is considered the location of Shot Mishot, this location? What are the details? Rabbi Yochanan, a third of the way down, Mi ihi dekira ulael. It's from this location of ihi ledikra and going higher up. I have Amar Rabbi Yochanan that it's actually further, that this location of Shot Mishot is ad ma'avarta de gizma. So says the Gemara, you're right, Amar Abai Ritzua Nafka. This phrase should be reminiscent of a Gemara in Gittin from Yaakov Tzipori, that the land jutted in such a way that this piece of property was in fact within both shitas. The Gemara now focuses in on a couple of different cities that were located in Bavel. Amar of Ika bar Avin, Amar of Hananel, Amar Rab. Chalzon, Nihavand, these 2 particular cities, Chalzon and Nihavand, Harei Kigola Leyuchs, and these are trustworthy places as it relates to Yichus, and you can marry someone from there, no problem. Says the Gemara, Amar le Abaye, Lo Tatzisule, don't listen to him. He was biased. Why was Reb Chananel biased? Because Yavama, he did nafla lehasam. His brother had just passed away with no children, and he wanted to marry the Yavama, who was his ex-sister-in-law. So he had a little bit of a yetzer hara to lie. So he pushes back. Amarle, atu didihi. You think that I'm the one who's going to paskin my own shilas when my own yetzer hara is involved? That's absolutely not correct. Reb Chananel, this actually is the opinion of Reb Chananel. So I should actually correct this and say the person whose brother died was Ika bar Avid. So he says, no, I was quoting from Reb Chananel. Says the Gemara, Azal Shailuha le Reb Chananel. They brought the Shail in front of Reb Chananel. Hey, can you tell me about this city of Chilazon and Nehava and these two particular cities? Amar Lahu Hachi, Amar Rab. Rab was of the opinion that Chilazon and Nehava and Harei Kigola liyuchsin. This is considered to be a place that's valid as it relates to yuchsin, and you can get married to someone from that location. And the Gemara says, Upliga de Rabbi Abba bar Kahana. This, in fact, was argued by the Shita of Rabbi Abba bar Kahana. To Amar Rabbi Abba bar Kahana, Mai dechsiv. What does the pasuk mean when it says, Vayanchem bachlach uvchavor nehar gozan ve'arei madai? That these people were placed into bachlach, ubechavor nahar. We don't even know what these words mean. So chalach. Chlach zo Chalzon. This is a city, the city of Chalzon. Chabor zo Hadayav, and Nahar Gozen zo Ginzak. Arei Madai Chemdan v'Chavroseha. Ve'amrila zu Nahavan v'Chavroseh. So we see that both of our cities of Chalzon and Nahavan are mentioned. My Chavroseh. What does the word Chavroseh mean when it's referenced over here? Amar Shmuel Krach Mushchi Chuski v'Rumki. That the cities that immediately surrounded Chalzon and Hadayav and Ginzak and what was the last one? Arimodai Chemdan. All of these were surrounded by these other three small locales. And Amar of Yochanan v'kulam lifsol. Oh, so here we see a stira, because we initially said in the name of Rav that the city of Chalzon and Nehavand were considered to be mutter liyuchsin. Here we see pasal liyuchsin stira. So it says the Gemara, Kasal Kadaita Mushchi Hainu Mushchini. We thought that perhaps Mushchi and Mushchini were the same. That can't be. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Avin, Amar Shmuel Mushchini Harei Kigol Liyuchsin. Mushchini is valid and Mushchi is not. Mushchi Luchur and Mushchini Luchur. What does the pasuk mean? All the same sugya. We'll connect all the dots in a moment. Utlas Eloin Bepuma Bein Shineha. There were three Eloin. The first ayin is interchangeable with a tzadi. Atzela is a rib. There are three ribs in the mouth between his teeth. This is a pasuk from Daniel referencing a nevuah. Amar Rabbi Yochanan zu Chalzon Hadayav v'Nitzivan. Remember our cities. One of them is Chalzon. Shepa'amin pola'asan upa'amin polatsan. Sometimes the country would have it included in the borders, and sometimes it would not. Sometimes it was part of Avel, and sometimes it wasn't. The Russia-Poland border, many other countries that had shared borders. The borders fluctuated like crazy. So the Gemara says that it wasn't so pasha. What does the pasuk mean when it says ve'aru? There was a lion chiva that I saw, acharei tinyana dame ladov, and it was similar to a bear. So Tani Rav Yosef, elu parsim. These are the Persians. She'ochlan v'shosim kidov. The Persians, they would eat and drink like a bear. Umisur balin kidov. They were fat like a bear. Umegadlan seir kidov. They grow hair like a bear. Ve'in lemenucha kidov. They were always moving about just like a bear would, minus hibernation. When they were not hibernating, they were apparently moving around a lot. I am not aware of the habits of bears, but apparently the Gemara is. And the Persians were, they ate like bears, they were fat like bears, and they were hairy like bears. I have no idea how to respond to either of your comments. I don't even know what to say. And I'm just glad you're on that side of the camera, so you don't have to deal with the fallout. Just saying. Ravami ki hava chazi parsa derachi. When he would see a Persian person that was riding on a horse, he would always call out. If he saw a Persian, what would he say? Amar hainu duba naida. Oh, there's a moving bear. Yeah, just got to be careful. You know, the Persians of old were very hairy, apparently. Amar le Rav lalevi. Yeah, once is enough.
He's looking at me like I did.
Yeah, well, you're guilty. You're guilty.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's the back table.
Yes, the back table. So the Gemara says, Rebbe said to Levi, Hareini Parsim, show me, or really describe for me the Persians. Amar le domim lechayolos shel Beis David. They are as strong as were the legions of Beis David, a very strong army. So too were the Persians very strong. Hareini Chabaran. Who are these people who are Chabaran? Domim lemalache Chabala. They were similar to people who were very destructive. Hareini Ishmaelim. Show me what the Ishmaelim look like. So it says the Gemara, Domim le Seirim shel Beis Hakisei. This is talking about the angels of the Beis Hakisei. The Mefarshim here explain that they always wear black. Hareini Talmidei Chachamim shevet Bavel. Show me the Talmidei Chachamim that were in Bavel. Domim lemalachei Ashares. They are similar to the angels, to the malachei Ashares. Rashi over here says 5 lines into the wide lines. Domim lemalachei Ashares levushim levanim ve'atufim kemalachei Ashares. I believe this is one of the singular Mari Makomos that Talmidei Chachamim should wear white. I don't, other than Hilchos Shabbos, which has its own concept of wearing white, but I'm not familiar with other the fact that many in the rabbinic world, in the yeshiva world, wear white was a natural evolution of a community, just the way the communities dress. But nevertheless, it does seem to be that there's a shtickle Mari Makom here that Talmidei Chachamim Sheba Bavel, that they wore white. The Rebbe, when Rebbe was about to die, Omar, he said a number of things that were prophetic in nature. Says the Gemara, Homanya, Ika beBavel. There's a community in Bavel called Homanya, Kula Amonoihi, and he knew that all of these people were from Ammon and none of them were Yidden. That uproots a lot of marriages. That's not so pashut. Maskarya Ika beBavel. There's a city called Maskarya, Kula de Mamzirahi. Oh, everybody there is Mamzerim. That's not good either. Birka Ika beBavel, there's a city called Birka. Shnei Achim Yeshba, there are 2 brothers, Shemachlifin Neshosem Zelazeh, who have switched their spouses, which is, of course, not only inappropriate, but also generates mamzerus because it's arayos. So the child of arayos is always going to be mamzerus. Birta Desatya Ika beBavel, there's a city called Birta Desatya. Hayom Saru me'acharei hamakom. Today they are Saru, which is a reference to the word Satya, which means to steer away or to deviate. That's where the Birta Satya, the city of deviation. So Hayom Saru me'acharei hamakom. What happened? De'ika Pira B'kavrei B'Shavsa. There was a particular pond that had gotten smaller. It drained a little bit on Shabbos. And they violated the Isra of Tzad by trapping some of the fish that were there in this now draining pond. Vishamtinu Rav Achai Rabbi Yoshia. He put them into Shamta. He put them into excommunication. V'ishtamud, and then they decided on their own to leave the Yiddish people. They decided to rebel. Of course, you can't leave the Jewish people. Once a Yid, always a Yid. But they decided to not be from anymore. Akra de Agma Ika Bavel. There is this place of Akra de Agma, which is in Bavel, and Ada Bar Ava Yeshba. There's a person named Ada Bar Ava who lives there. Turning to the top of Ayin Beis Zafta Gadaf, we'll be going until 3 lines until the end of the page, but it won't take that long, as you will soon see. Hayom Yoshe Becheko Shel Avram. Today he's sitting in the lap of Avraham. Rashi goes through a couple of mafarshim here, a couple of approaches, but Lamaisa, on the second line of Rashi, says, "V'nir daha Yoshe b'cheiko shel Avram Avinu shenichnas lebris mila v'zer of Ada bar Ava sheherich yomim harbe mishemes Rabbi ad doros achronim b'mei Rabbi Nachman bar Yitzchak." He lived through 3 generations of Amoraim. That's a very long life. That's let's call it 100 years, whatever. He lived a long life. So then he had his bris that day. Hayom nolad Rabbi Huda beBavel, and the day that that Rebbe was to die, Rabbi Huda was born in Bavel. The Amar Mar, we learned, Keshemes Rabbi Akiva nolad Rebbe. When Rabbi Akiva died, Rebbe was born, seemingly that they never met one another. Keshemes Rebbe nolad Rabbi Huda. When Rebbe died, Rabbi Huda was born, and Rabbi Huda, the famed Rabbi Huda, became the Talmud of both Rav and Shmuel. Keshemes Rav nolad Rava. Rabbi Huda, when Rabbi Huda died, the nolad Rava. Keshemes Rava nolad Rav Ashi. That brings us all the way to the end of the Amoraim. These births were the singular births that navigated the end of the Tanaic period all the way through the end of the Amoraic period. It's not that many people. And they lived, their lives spanned hundreds of years. It says the Gemara, Lelamercha, Ayin Beis Amid Beis, 5 lines down, She'ein Tzadik Niftar Min Ha'olam. A righteous person will not leave the world, Ad Shenivra Tzadik Kamoso, until the Kadosh Baruch Hu creates another Tzadik in his stead. The sun will shine and the son will come as well. So meaning it's a homily. By the time Eli was to die, Zarcha Shimsho Shel Shmuel Haramati. We know that Shmuel was then alive. This is based on the pasuk Shenemar B'ner Elokim Terem Yichbeh. The light of Hashem before it was to be extinguished, a reference to Eli. Shmuel Shochev, Shmuel was lying in his bed and got a nevuah. So we were able to see that with the death of Eli, right at that time coincided the nevuah that took place, or the birth really. This was talking about nevuah, but Lamais, it's even the birth of Shmuel. What does the pasuk mean when it says Siva Hashem liYaakov Seviva Tzara Yehuda Omer Kegon Homanya Lefum Nara? Homanya, as we saw on the previous page, in the name of Rebbe, and interesting to note that it's quoted by Rabbi Yehuda, who was born at the time that Rebbe died. So he said Homanya is Lefum Nara. Homanya is right next to the city of Pumnara, and they had to keep a sharp distinction because Homanya wasn't from. Homanya was all Ammonite. Forget about from. Many of them were Goyim. The pasuk then says, "Vayihi Keinvi." There was a nevuah. Upaltihu ben Benayahu Mace, and he died. This person Upaltihu, we're going to talk about him now. V'pol al panai v'zak kol gadol v'omer aha Hashem Elokim. How can it be that this person's going to die? Now, we weren't sure. Rabbi Shmuel, there was a machlokes. Chad Amar that Paltihu's death was l'tova, v'chad Amar l'ra. Now let's analyze both sides. Was Paltihu's death l'tova, or was Paltihu's death l'ra? We're 12 lines down or so, give or take, on Ayin Beis and Mid Beis. 6 lines into the Y lines. Manda Amar l'tova. According to those who say that Paltihu's death was good, kiha de istandra de mishan chasne de Nebuchadnezzar haba. There was a particular person. He was one of the rulers in that neighborhood, and he was the chassan. He was the son-in-law of Nebuchadnezzar. You could imagine what that family Thanksgiving was like. It probably wasn't so good. And Shalach Le, the son-in-law, sent to the father-in-law. He said, "Mikule hai shivya da'aisis lach. You have so many people who are captives by you. Lo shadras lon dekoy lekaman. You can't send a couple of captives my way. I need some slaves. Can you send over some captives?" So Nebuchadnezzar wanted to send over some Yidden. And this Amar Le Paltihu ben Benayahu, Paltihu pipes up and says, "Don't do that. Anan, we Jews, dechashvinan, we're chashuv. We want to serve you. Nekum kamachacha. We want to stay here and serve you. Ve'avdin nizlulasam. We'll send our avadim. We're your avadim, but we have our avadim. Our avadim we'll send down to your son-in-law." This was considered to be a good thing. V'amar Navi mishasa tova b'Yisrael yamus bechatzi yamav. And when Yechezkel was in this pasuk where it says that that everybody cried, va'epol al panai ve'ezak, the pasuk 4 lines into the wide lines. So then it's saying that what was his name? Paltihu was a good guy. He tried to help the Yidden to not be put into a more complex situation, and they should stay where they are. They had it was a bad life, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Let's keep things as they are. The enemy you know is better than the enemy you don't know. So the Gemara says maybe it was a positive. What was the other possibility? A third of the way down, maybe a little bit less, on Ayin Beis and Beis Manda Amar L'Ra. According to those who understand the pasuk in Yechezkel that Paltihu ben Benayahu's death was a bad thing, how can this be? The Gemara says in colored detail, D'chsiv atavo usi el shar Beis Hashem hakadmoni haponeh kedima. These people came to the Beis Hashem. They were facing east. V'hinei befesach hashar esrim v'chamisha ish. There were 25 people. And among them were as Yozniah ben Ezer, as Paltihu ben Benayahu, Ha'am. These 2 people, Paltihu being one of them, were one of the officers of the people. And the next pasuk is terrible. They came inside to the Beis Hashem. They stood between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. There were 25 of them. Achorem el Heichal Hashem. Their backsides were facing the Heichal. Ufnehem Kedma. And their faces were facing east. So this double language is very, very odd. You don't need to be, a map specialist to know that if you're Pneim Kedma, that you're Achoreim, where it was El HaHeichal. So asks the Gemara, Mi mashma shnemar ufneim Kedma, eni yodea shachorem klape Myra. Of course, Pashat, that it's the case that if your face is facing east, that your back is facing west. So why did the pasuk go out of its way to state the obvious? There's no such thing as real estate on parchment that's used without good reason. So the Gemara tells us a horrible story about Paltihu and others, 25 people. What then was the extraneous phrase that their backsides were facing HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So the Gemara responds, halfway down on Ayin Beis and Beis. They would remove their clothing on their backsides, and they would go to the bathroom with their backs facing the ulam. They would defecate in front of the ulam. We as Yidden pine for the binyan Beis Hamikdash. Such a thing is jarring to think about, that someone could be on such a level as they stand in the Makom HaMikdash that we so desire, and they completely ruin that space with such an odd and strange busha v'cherpa type of avodah zarah. The Ka'amar, and what was Yechezkel's comment about Paltihu? How can it be that Yechezkel was saying Misha Asa Razos B'Yisrael? This kind of person who does such evil things, Yamos Al Mitaso, he's going to die a simple death. Paltihu should have died a vicious death for what he did. Strange Havamina, I'll just call it out. Why? Because we often say that Rishaim should have a better life here, so that they get all their payros out over here, so that their next world has a lengthier. But the Gemara doesn't entertain that. And the Gemara assumes from here that Paltihu was a Rasha. So two different approaches about Paltihu. Was he a tzaddik because he limited the avadim from going from Nebuchadnezzar to his son-in-law, or was he a Rasha because he did this very odd behavior of defecating in the Makam HaMikdash, klape the ulam? Fine, two different shitas. And we had said that Rav and Shmuel, one of them held one way, one of them held the other. The Gemara brings a raya tistayim. We're halfway down on Ayin Beis and Beis. Tistayim, maybe we can conclude the Shmuel Amar Lera, the Shmuel de Amar Lera, that Shmuel was the opinion who says that Paltihu was not a tzaddik. How so? Because according to Shmuel, as we'll soon see, there were no avadim in that particular community at all. And that means that the avadim were never sent there, which means it can't be option number one. Let's see the writing inside. So how can it be that Tistayim de Shmuel de Amar Lera, de Amar B'chia bar Avin Amar Shmuel, Mushchani harehi kigola liyuchsin? We treat it like that foreign place, that outside of Eretz Yisrael place that is kosher liyuchsin, namely that it's part of Bavel. Mishon, and in the city of Mishon, lo mishum avdus v'lo mishum mamzerus. Oh, we see that there was no avdus in this particular city. Ela kohanim shahayu ba'lo ikpidu ala grushos. They were not makbid. They did marry divorced women. I remember one of my childhood friends, his mother married a divorced Kohen. I remember this distinctly. And even as a child, and I barely knew anything about anything, as most children, they just got married. And then one day I stayed at their house for Shabbos. They lived in another community. And then they took me to a treif restaurant Sunday morning for breakfast. I had never done this in my life. I've never been in a treif restaurant as a meal. Never. And I didn't know what was going on. So I ordered a salad. I don't know what I was doing, and a cup of Coke. I still order the Coke, by the way. But I don't typically order the tray for salad. So I ate just the vegetables, but what did I know? I sprinkled on the Parmesan cheese, which pashut was not kosher. But as a 14-year-old, I think I fared fairly well, considering I had basically zero halachic knowledge, other than I should not be in this room right now. So then it wasn't surprising that she married a garush, that this guy, that she was a grusha and the Kohen married her, whatever. Anyways, this community had no avadim. So if this community had no avadim, then it can't be the city that was spoken about between Nebuchadnezzar and his son-in-law, because Nebuchadnezzar didn't send Jews there, but did send avadim there. But here we see there were no avadim there. Ella, it must be that according to the Shita of Shmuel, it must be that since there were no avadim there, he must be under the assumption that Paltihu was a Rasha, and therefore he was the one who defecated in the Makam HaMikdash, Klape Mara. Says the Gemara, Lav Dafka Lo'olam Emalach Shmuel, that Amar Latova. Perhaps this is not a good Mari Makom, because of Shmuel Ataime. It may well be that Avadim were sent to this particular community. To Amar, that Shmuel may well hold, Hamafkir Avdo, if a person is Mafkir their Eved, Yotza Lecheros Ve'eno Tzarach Get Shichrur. There is no need to do more than simply free him. And as long as the Avadim were sent to this town were freed, then you're right. This place is considered like Gola Liyuchsin. They're totally fine to marry. Shenemar, the pasuk says, Kol Eved Ish Miknas Kesef. I feel like we've seen this Gemara before. Yeah, it's in Yevamos and in Nazir and in Gittin. Oh, only 3 times. Okay. My feelings weren't strong enough. So the Gemara says, what about this pasuk that's Ad Eved Ish below Evet Isha. Why does the pasuk reference an Isha? Ela Evet sheyesh lo reshus lerabo alav karui Evet. Evet she'ein lerabo reshus alav eno karui Evet. A person whose Rav has no domain over him anymore because he was mafkir him. He's no longer an Evet, even without a star shichrur. So therefore, very well could be that Avadim were sent to that first community, and it very well could be that Shmuel holds the Tova. So therefore, we don't know if Rav or Shmuel was the one who held that Paltiu ben Benayahu was a Rasha or was not a Rasha. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Zudivrei Rav Meir. All that we've learned so far is like Rav Meir. But Chachamim Omrim, the Chachamim say Kol Aratos Bechezkas Kashrus Heim Omdos. Perhaps, according to the Chachamim, they have a more broad, lenient view that we assume people to be kosher unless otherwise noted from all lands. That's basically what we do nowadays. We assume people are kosher. I remember, pretty sure when I got married, Rabbi Matenki made me get a letter from someone saying that, or no, he wrote me a letter for something else. I remember what it was, a little bit different. So, okay, so basically we do nothing for our chasnas here. We're just on some assumption that the people that are children or that we marry are from a Yidden. Okay, so it says the Gemara, that was the Tana Kama, the Machlokes of Meir and the Chachamim in regards to Aratzos in general. Do they have a Chezkas Kashrus or not? Rav Meir was Makbid and the Chachamim were Mekel. Ameimar Shar Le the Rav Huna Bar Nasa Leminsav Itza Mechuz Yasa. And Ameimar allowed Rav Huna to marry someone from Chutz La'aretz, from a Choza. Says the Gemara, Amar Le Rav Ashi, my daitach. What exactly is your opinion? If you want to say, Do Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel Zudivri Rav Meir V'Chachamim Amram Kol Aratzos Bechezkas Kashrus Ein Omdos. If you want to say that the reason why you're allowed to marry the woman from a Choza is because we hold like the Chachamim that Kol Ha'aratos are ksheros. That can't be. Rav Kahana lo masni hachi. Rav Kahana was makbid. He said that not all the aratzos are kosher. Rav Papa also lo masni hachi. They also felt that kol haratzos were not kosher. Rav Zvid also lo masni hachi. They got a lot of Mari Makomos again. Just because there's a sheet of the Chachamim doesn't mean we hold that way. That's why we don't paskin from the Gemara on our own. We need Rishonim and Achronim and a Shulchan Aruch, Shachs and Tazes and Igros Moshe and all the Chuvas. We need everything. Can't learn a sugya from Stam hearing one brisa. So the Gemara says, don't worry. Afilu hachi lo kibla minei. He didn't accept the Moser and he did still hold the kol ha'aratzos were ksheros. Why? Okay, thank you. Because the Gemara says, Mishum Deshmiya Leme Rav Zvid Naharda. Rav Zvid Minarda was a Mekel. Let's talk about one more sugya of Mamzerus. Tanu Rabbanan, 4/5 of the way down, 12, 15 lines from the bottom. Tanu Rabbanan, Mamzere v'nesine tehorim la'asid lavo dibri Rab Yosi. Mamzerim and Nesinim are going to be tahor in the future. Rav Meir Omer ain't tahorim. No, they will not be. Amar le Rav Yosi, wait 1 second. How can you say that they won't be pure? HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be matahir them in the future. La'asid lavo. V'lo kvar nemar v'zarakti alechem ma'im tahorim v'tahartem. It says tahor twice. It says tahorim and v'tahartem. One of the phrases of Tahorim we use for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur season. That's a pasuk we quote all the time. The other one is to teach us that Mamzerim and Nesinim will be Tahor at some point in the future. It's only from Tuma and it's only from Avodah Zarah. But the fact that you're a Mamzer, that's your problem. And the psukim don't absolve you from your problems. So Amar Lo Rabbi Yossi says, that's an extra pasuk. So says the Gemara, that's not a good argument. Rav Meir says that the pasuk says Vayeshev Mamzer v'Ashdod. It seems to be that they're still called a Mamzer, and they were all set to live in the city of Ashdod as Mamzerim. You have to live in your own little enclave in Ashdod. Ela the Rabbi Yossi, but according to Rabbi Yossi, how do you understand that pasuk? My Vayeshev Mamzer v'Ashdod. The pasuk seems to say that the Mamzerim have to live separately. According to you, Rabbi Yossi, that the Mamzerim are going to all of a sudden be Tahorim in the future. What does the pasuk mean by you? How do you understand this pasuk of Vayeshev Mamzer v'Ashdod? Says the Gemara, the Matargim Rav Yosef. There's a targum of Rav Yosef on the pasuk of Vayeshev Mamzer v'Ashdod. On the word Vayeshev, the targum reads Yasvun Beis Yisrael l'Rochtzan. They will settle. These Jews, the Mamzerim, will settle the Rochtzan securely Be'ar Ahon in our land. To have a damuba, which in the past was something that was a place for lenuchrain, only for people who were foreigners. So it seems to imply that you're no longer a foreigner, now you're a regular yid, and really you'll become tahor even from your mamzerus. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha ki Rabbi Yossi. We seem to paskin this way that at some point in the future the mamzerus will be dissolved. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Hilad, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha ki Rabbi Yossi. Without that, Says Rav Yosef, if not for the psak of Shmuel, Hava Asi Eliyahu, I might have thought that Eliyahu would have come along. Mafik minon savrani, we would have seen throngs of people being dragged out of their communities, kolarin, in chains, because we thought they were mamzerin. Elamai, we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. And at some point in the future, these mamzerim will become freed. Tomorrow's daf will be recorded and posted in Mir Hashem by the middle of the day. We'll pick up at Tanu Rabbanon, 3 lines from the bottom on daf Ayin Beis of a Beis. Wishing you all a beautiful night. Mir Hashem back together in person on Thursday night.